Okay, we spoke about last week that even though we know they have 18 minutes from when the matzah starts, it still has to be baked. A person shouldn't leave the matzah, even l'rega, without any asik. Obviously, as much as possible. But we said that's only if it's done with a proper asik. But if someone does an asik that's not a proper asik, it's not a full pounding of it, but just touching it, not only is it not considered asik, it makes things worse. Melo, it's better not to touch it, because remember, till 18 minutes, it can't come chametz at all. Just a din lechatchila that should be asik. But if you can do something that's going to cause an asik that's not a full asik, that's going to make it hot, and that's going to quicken the chema process, and then it could come chametz in less than 18 minutes. So I just want to go through a little bit some practical applications of what we spoke about, and then we'll continue. In a lot of matzah bakeries, let's talk about the way it's set up over here. First, the one that needs the dough, he needs the dough with his hands. Then he passes it onto a table. That is people that they call them thinners, and they bang down the dough with like a metal rod. That helps it that the water gets mixed up with the flour very well. Then normal seder is that is those rolls. It's looks like a log is brought to another table, and people roll it. Then tell the waiter, the person that's ready to cut it. Then someone cuts them to pieces, looks like half balls, and then they give out those half balls to the people that are.
Okay, that's 5 different people already.
That's 5 different people, right? Okay. But even the finish itself, let's say in the matzah baker here, there's 5 different dinners. There's 5 different tables. They give it to someone that's rolling it. Then there's 2 rows of tables. Each roll of table, there's someone on the top. He cuts that log into around 10 pieces. Then those pieces are thrown to the maschilim, and the maschilim throw them when they're finished kneading it to the goyim. They finish it. Then it goes to the one that does the redla, and then from there it goes into the oven. Now, so according to what we said, the only time it's considered an asik if it's an asik gomer. It's not an asik gomer, then it's mekalkal because you're having training chimam. So obviously the person that's kneading it, it's a gomer. The people that are banging down with those metal rods, that's a real asik gomer. There's no shaila about it. But the next step, after you have the log of the tzura of an isa, looks like a roll, there the bakery will not allow you to press down on it, because then it's going to lose the tzura of the log. It's going to lose the tzura of the roll of dough that they want, because they have to cut into half balls. So therefore, all they let you do is to roll it. That is shloikadin, because by rolling it, you're creating a chimum, and that's not considered asik. So better just leave it, even if it's going to be a couple seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, even longer. It's not going to come chametz. It's just a shayla chatchila. Better leave it than to start rolling it, which is going to quicken the chimut process.
Why is rolling that asik?
Because we spoke about last week. Asik is only when you press down on the whole thing, but over here it's only touching the top of it, and that's going to create a chimum on the roll. Now, after he cuts it into half balls, then even if it is sitting on the table, they invite the king come chametz, but you should do an asik. At that point, you could do an asik because you could take it and press it down, because then they can eventually make it into the matzah. That's already the piece that you're making into the matzah. There you could press it down. So you should have people over there sitting down and pressing it down. The matzah bakery complained to me, I was 2 weeks ago, that there were people that were mamash kvetching it down, mamash, until there was nothing left of the dough, and they can't make a matzah out of that. Obviously, you don't have to do that. But the main point is that it should be a full kvetch down. Oh. Now, and obviously, then when the people are rolling the dough, that's a full asik. And when the red blood, that's all a full asik. Now, the Ramah says like this. The Ramah on Tofan Tesef down it says, Akelim shemasakrim of amatzis, Vasakim shechoitim boy isa, Igardem tomid b'shas asiyah shleiblik ben abetzek. That means the kelim that you make in the matzahs, or the knife, you should continuously clean it. The Mishnah brings down means you're cleaning the bowl, cleaning the everything else that could be cleaned, even though, remember, there's no chash of chimutz till 18 minutes. But alpha pikein, you don't want to have anything without any asik. Therefore, in between the doughs, the Mishnah says You should wash your hands because you're having obviously some dough stuck in your hand on the last lisha, and that dough is sitting there without any asik. So it's a shayla of l'chatchila. Let's go through in the matzah bakery, in the things that you could be doing that could be a shayla l'chatchila. So the way it goes is they pour the flour in, then they put the water in. So right away it makes verachal 3 or 4 leashes one after another. So obviously you don't have to switch the bowl in between the leashes because there's no hefsek, because as soon as he finishes leash number 1 and he gives it to the people that are finning it, right away he's making another leash. So it's not really sitting anything. But after he makes 3 or 4 leashes, at that point, taking that and he has a stop of another, let's say 10-15 seconds. So then the right thing would be to switch the bowl because all that dough is sitting there without any asuk, and you give him, and he should wash his hands. And this way he gets rid of all the dough that's on his hand, and he should switch, if he's wearing gloves, he should switch the gloves so he shouldn't have that little dough on his hand. The same thing with the finners over there, they bang it down on the dough. Now, in between those, you should clean down the table, even though there's no chayla of chimus, because that dough, even if it's sitting there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's not going to be a problem. But since the maisa is being left without an asik, you should clean it. So in between, you should have someone that's in charge to clean it off. While he's doing it,
The Shitas HaRav is only.
no, we didn't speak about the Shitas HaRav. We're going to talk about the Shitas HaRav soon.
There's no problem with dough on the table.
There's no problem with dough on the table. It's just like a tchila that you shouldn't leave without an asik. Now, b'shas, when he's pressing down, sometimes little pieces that fall to the side, you shouldn't try to stick your hand in and try to clean it off because that thinner is a very strong piece of metal and you really hurt yourself by sticking your hand in. But after he finishes the dough, then you should clean down the table with a shmata, obviously not a wet shmata, but should be cleaned with shmata and get rid of all the pieces of dough. The same thing, the people that are cutting the dough, he cuts it with a knife. That knife, he takes the log of dough, cuts it into 10 pieces. That knife should be switched after every single time, because from one dough to the next dough could be a shy of 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, depends how long the mitzias is. And that dough is sitting on the knife then for 15 seconds. We're at an asik. So obviously that's not like a tchila. So you switch the knife. Now, in between, you have a whole group of people that are cleaning the knives and the bowls to make sure they're clean. Obviously, you shouldn't use hot water, even warm water, because it's going to cause the bowls and the sakin to be hot. That can obviously create a chimum into the isa. You have to make sure the water is cold. Sometimes I've seen the water is a little bit warm because the workers don't want the water to be too cold for them to wash their hands, which I understand, but it's going to create a problem for us. So you have to make sure the water is cold. Also, you have to be careful. Many times I've seen that the bowls are old and they have cracks in it, and because there's cracks in it, that causes a little piece of isa to get stuck. Sometimes you even stuck from a previous run, which should be mamash chimus. But even from that time, you have to make sure that there shouldn't be cracks, and you have to make sure to clean it out very well. So till now, everything we're discussing is a shayla of lechatchila. That means lechatchila, we know the matzah is not going to come from till 18 minutes. Lechatchila, you shouldn't leave anything without any asik lechatchila, but it's only if you can do asik gomer. But if you can't do something that's called asik gomer, then better leave it because there's no shayla of coming chametz. But if you're going to do an asik with it, you might create some type of chimutz, and that would be a problem. Now, I want to talk about what you do the Shitas HaRav. Everyone knows matzahs with the Shitas HaRav. What exactly is a matzah Shitas HaRav? We're going to try to explain it. And just a side note, everyone says a Shitas HaRav, makbid Shitas HaRav, not makbid Shitas HaRav. Shitas HaRav is halacha that's brought down in Shulchan Aruch. I think when people say makbid on the Rosh, not makbid Rosh is maybe exactly how to learn the Rosh and how right to makbid the Rosh. But that's in the Rosh, everyone has to be going. Anyways, so what's the Rosh? The Rosh is like this. After you are Isaac with the Pesach, then is Scham and Kachzi Daim, so Rosh says, that if you are Isaac with the Pesach, and the Pesach came hot, get the Scham from Yidayim, then you can leave it at an Isaac, then it'll be the Schamim, it's Miyat. You don't have 18 minutes anymore. The Chaber and Siv Beis brings this Rosh down. And the Mishtabur in the Bialocha, the Master of Achros explains that this Rosh is based on what we spoke about last week, the Blezim Mitz and the Mordechai. They say that if someone's lost in a house or by Pia Tanner, it's a problem. Even though the Mordechai says you have 18 minutes, that's on the stam heat. But if you have an extra special heat that's going to quicken the chemis process, that would be a problem. That's what the Rosh says, that since you had a Ribi Asik and a lot of Chimui Yadayim, that's going to quicken Chimut's process. That means even though we know you have 18 minutes, but that's stomach. But if you can have something that's a biyuchadik achima that's going to quicken the chimas process, then avada, you don't have 18 minutes. Like we said, that's the yisod din why in loshin bechama and in loshin in front of the tanner. Maybe the Rosh says that once there's a lot of isik yadayim, then it's going to be a problem. Now, the obvious question is, at which point does that isik start? Obviously, you can't say it starts as soon as you make the lisha, because if it starts when you're doing the lisha, then we isn't again the share middle of the Gemara. Bialoch already is more at this point. He says, "Shiur the middle of the Gemara who betzek achli shasoi, paydim sherir roisai. Alisha gufa ina mechamisa hapul kulia." Everyone holds that the lisha itself is not going to mechamad a lot, obviously, because the Gemara says it's a share middle. Mr. Bura says, "Esifkot yinches ulfiz etzorach lizom ba'oi achasha orchu birdu hamatzah." Shabur says, according to the Rosh, you have to be careful. After they made that richa, it means they finished the matzah and putting in the front of one that's making the holes. So you have to make sure they should make the holes right away. You shouldn't wait, because here you can have the shitzer Rosh. Same thing after he was a menaka. It means the one that the red look that made the holes in the isa. Now it's waiting to go into the oven. Leave that piyatana, just sitting over there on the table waiting to go to bring it to the oven. Also, it's going to be a problem because you have the sheet of the Rosh and it says Oilam Ein Zorim Bezeh. So it's clear in the Mishnah Berurah that after that richa, I mean, after you finish making the matzah, the full matzah, after the goyim finished it, sitting in front of the redla, or after the redla finishes before the person's taking the oven, that you for sure have the sheet as Harosh. And that's what the Mishnah Berurah says. Sifkon Yidal, when the Mechaber says that Nicho Isa Blei Esek, means lechatchila, now leave the Isa red and Esek. The Mishnah Berurah says, but so loy mal achil lishasi, after lisha, paydu shes klarachis before you start to be married the matzah. Obviously, in the Schamadai Mishmaji Daim Harba, still there's going to be a problem. Lechatchila, you should leave it at an Esek. But the Shatzian says, but after the riches of matzah, they finish making the matzah, then about we know even less than the Shia Mills and Schametz in the Vulakameh. That's the sheet of the Rosh. So the question is exactly where does the Rosh start? The Mishnah Berurah says, after the Lisha, before the Richa, we don't have the Rosh. The Mishnah Berurah says, when you put it in front of the redla, when the matzah is finished, you have the Rosh. Now, what's in between? A lot of matzah bakeries, let's talk about the process in the Lake of Matzah Bakery. Let's talk about first, they make the Lisha, then they bang it down with the thinners, then they have like a log that they split in half, then they cut it into 10 small pieces, and then they give out those pieces to the maschilim, and then those pieces go from the maschilim to the goyim, and then from the goyim, once they finish it, they go to the person that's reddling. So at which point exactly does it start? The sheet is a rosh. So the Mayor Motcha said like this: Moi tzorich lizor is that mashroik lachtocho matzah the sakna b'yadayim kechatzi kador, that they make the matzah kechatzi kador. It means when they cut the isa, they take the roll, they cut it into pieces like a half a kador. That's maschama miyat, and you have to be careful not to leave it. So it's clear in the Mayor Motcha that he holds once you make this half balls, means to make the piece that they're gonna roll out the dough from it. He holds you already have the sheet of rosh. Ani's daiti from the Mishnah Berurah is before not like that. Mishnah Berurah does not bring down this Mayor Mordechai, and only speaks about the sheet of rosh after the aricha, before the menaker. But it doesn't speak about what's the halacha before the aricha, but when they have the half balls. It would seem from the Mishnah Berurah that would not be nichlal in the sheet of rosh. But the question is, let's say in the lot of matzah bakeries, Lake Matzah Bakery has the same thing, that they have maschilim and goyim. That means a maschilim, if they take the half ball and they start rolling it out, and they roll it out basically, and then there's goyim and they finish rolling it out. Then it goes to the redla. What's the halacha between the maschilim and the goyim? Do you have the sheets of rosh? So I don't find anyone close that speaks about the shaila. Well, then he's like after the maschilim, it's basically more or less a matzah, just a goyim to finish it to its full tachlis. So I think it's poshut that you push it, but nearer that about you would have the sheetas rosh over there. But before then, you don't have the Shitz Rosh. You just have the Din Lechatchila that you shouldn't do. So what comes out is that till Taricha, till they start making the dough, start rolling out the dough, there it's only a Shai Lechatchila, and you have 18 minutes, unless you made an Asik that wasn't Asik Gomer, that's going to cause a Chima. But if you have the Richa, after the Maschilim started making the matzah, kosher came by the Gomer, or before the red law, then you have the Shitz Rosh, and the Rosh says that it's a Chametz Miyah. Now, the Etzem Shitz Rosh, like we said, is brought down in the Mechaba. But the Achronim have many, many kashas on the Shitz Rosh. The first kasha is that the Rambam says that if you have a Lisha and you Isaac all year, there's no problem. It sounds like even if you Isaac the whole Seder matzah, it's not a problem. Right though, the Achronim is that Moshe and Shuvas Rashba says that Ramban used to bring the matzah from one house after they made the matzah to another house to bake it. He is the Mechayro. Why isn't it a problem? Take the Daki Moshe. Why isn't it a problem? Mitzad the shita of the Rosh. Obviously, he holds. We mentioned last time that it doesn't help shaking it. That would not be considered an asik. Right? There's a Trumas Hadeshin that's brought down the Pesachim that if she is on a starif, and then let's say you had a Shia, and then someone did an Asik Gomer, so he says that the Asik Gomer is going to battle the Shia. Or if it's not Asik Gomer, then even if it's not a Shia itself, but it can't be a battle. So Frank Dr. Moshe, I don't understand. But if you hold that it can come Chametz Miyad, I don't have the Shia 18 minutes, comes Chametz Miyad, so what's the Negeyo? There's in the Trumas Hadeshin, if she is a Mestar, that's the Kashas. So there's different Mahalchim had a safe shot in the Rosh. The Bialocha brings down this Kashas, and he says, but the Peldas Daki Moshe is Matmiya on the Rosh, and Afa Pikin is not Masik on the Shulchan Aruch. And then the Bialocha says, maybe you could say that the Shulchan Aruch didn't take the Rosh with the full heat of the Rosh. The Rosh them done that it's a Chametz Miyad. Say maybe the Shulchan Aruch only holds the Rosh that once it's a Scham Yadayim, not for sure it's a Chametz, but we have to be choshish that the passage can be quickened. And if we see that it's a Schamim, then it'll be a Chametz. But about if we don't see that it's a Schamim, we don't have to worry about that it came Chametz. So you're just saying that Amal, you don't have to worry. But here, if you see that it's a Schamim, then we have to say it's Miyad Chametz. Not to say them in a stam, if you leave it, it's going to come Chametz. That's what the Bialocha is clear, and maybe that's the challenge. Now, Bemis, this Mahalach of the Bialocha I found in the Masach Gedolah Achronim before they learned Pshat like upon Halacha in the Rosh this way. There's in the Pesach Shabbos learned that way, and the Hagoyis from Baruch Frankel, and the Shvila David and Chaspitin, and to the Pesach Yoitza. All these Achronim seem to be matcha that like upon Halacha, even the Rosh himself maybe is a word that he held as a Chametz Miyad. But Halacha we pass like the Rosh only that if we see that it's a Schamim, then we have to be choshen as a Chametz. But not to say that without any special chimum, it's going to come the Chametz Miyad. The Chazon Ish brings down the Bialocha that understood the Rosh Kipshutoi that it's going to come Chametz, and he says that how could you say that? And there's a lot of kashas. And he says that the Rosh says Yaru Machnes doesn't mean that it's mamish comes Chametz Miyad. It just means that the process starts quicker, and you have to be choshen. Maybe it's going to come Shechsiv Ponav. But about the B'diavad, if you didn't see that about the, you don't have to be choshen. That's what he says. Now, that means obviously this chash of bir chash and stam the din of Esek Lechatchila. We said later that about Lechatchila, a person can't leave Easter without any Esek period. But there, it's a din Lechatchila, you shouldn't have any Shia without any Esek, but it's only Lechatchila. But if you had left without any Esek, about it's not going to come Chametz till 80 minutes. Here, it's a much darker din. Because here, Taka, maybe there's a chash Chametz. But for it's only the Lechatchila, but the Maisa, we're not going to ask her if we don't see shear of anything that looks like chimut. So it comes out, it's interesting, not to say that the Rosh Ladina is only when it's a schamim, then we have to rechesh that it's a schamim. Saying no, only when we take a see the simonim of chimut. But it's just saying that the chagaf you have to be much more cheshish, and maybe that's why lechatchila you shouldn't leave it without any asik, and it's a much darker than the regular Allah. That's what Chazon says. Maisa, look at Dake Moshe, it's very clear that he don't rush this way, because Dake Moshe has many kashas on the rush, and all his kashas will be emptied if you get an M1 like the Chazon. So the Chazon himself was Magish his kasha, that Dake Moshe not like that, like upon him, he wants to say maybe the Shulchan Aruch, the Mo was Chayza, and maybe the Chazon Aloha wants to say that Avada B'di Evid, the Rosh wouldn't answer. He's just saying that over here it's a much starker heroes. And remember, the Torah also has such a out. Upon him, so comes out here, we have two ways maybe how to for the Shitzer Rosh. Either the Rosh Taka doesn't mean that it's the Chametz Miyad. It means if you see a Chimum, then we have to be Chesed the Chametz Miyad. That's one halach. Or the Chazon is saying, you're just saying Lechatchila. Chila is a much darker than but Avada B'di Evid. If the Maisa you didn't see Tzimani Chimutz, we're not going to ask him. But Mr. Bur, like you mentioned before, says understood Kipshuta that's a Chametz Miyad, and he claims maybe it's a wife in Shen Schamel. He says Dafko not yet. But about the pastors of the Rosh Smashmo that is a Chash Chimas Betzim, and Mr. Bur is understood that way. Shalas, what does it mean? Does it mean Takamamish Miyad? The pastors that form is Smashmo Takamiyad, and the Mr. Bur says Sefkot Yudches. And as I is mashma and Dake Moshe, because he says it doesn't stem with the Shdeshin. Shdeshin says that she is a mitzdarif, or some mitzdarif, and what type of isik could you do? Could you not the she is affected? Dake Moshe, the Rosh, wasn't together than Siruf of Shias. They believe that the Shia itself, without an Asik, itself is going to be a problem without any serious mat. So it seems to be that he didn't learn the Rosh at any time, because Kokamat is any time, then there's no Shiloh. About it should come Osir Miyad. Then the Bialocha says, the Mishnah Berurah, the Esher Miyad will come have a Lav Dafka. He says maybe it's Lav Dafka or it's Lema Shir Muit. He doesn't say what the Shir is, but maybe a Shir Muit. But he says, anyways, I can't leave without any Asik. Because that's the Lechatchila, which is spoke about last time, which Aga from here is before the Mishpur understood that didn't now leaving without an Asik. Lechatchila was Mamashim second. It's clearing if the Rosh is that Nargo. Says no, maybe the Rosh is a drop more, but Akapon you can't leave without an Asik at all. Akapon Mishpur is of an Esh. Emes, the Makardis Mishpur is on my Mordechai and Sivkot and Dalam. He also class maybe the Yad the Kamal Dafko. He says ain't no Kabbalah Raya. I'm sure to bring that. I said Mishpur holds. On the Rosh Hashita, maybe you have to say that. So Bialoch and Tov Samachal also close that, and seems he names on that way that I you have to say is Lav Dafka Mamash Miyam. So upon Mishabura, Shpaz, they have to say that the Rosh, even if you hold the fact that this is Chametz, but it doesn't mean Mamash Miyam. It doesn't say exactly what that share is. Look in the Aruch HaShulchan, it sounds like it's a couple minutes. So the Shtuk of the Chiddush in Chotshoni says it's a minute. The being from Shlomo Zalman that is pulling together Vazuva, maybe up to a minute. For the Yashiv, as you do it, that he said a half a minute. They're saying that till you have these shiurim about you don't have to be choshesh that it's going to come chametz even like the Rosh. This is all the dieva. They're saying till a half a minute about you could half a minute, even a minute, you could say that about it's not going to come chametz. But about you should be careful that it shouldn't even stay for a second as long as it's possible. Because besides that, we have a din lechatchila of that lo yinichav le'asik period, and we spadly share that it means mamash a second. That's all, but it's din lechatchila. Upon lechatchila, you should have that. Right? The Shittas Rosh, the Bishop himself understood the Rosh means mamash miyad. You're just saying that kochach miyad is lav dafka mamash. Upon him, he understood that the pash is miyad, and the other chayim also understood that way. At this time, maybe only if it's a schamim. Upon him, it comes out that about it to say that it's osur. If it's less than half a minute, about it can't say it's also but the other. But about should be like Lashon V'Yashiv is Voshnelo. About it, what you could do better is about the more of a kiyum of the Shittas Rosh. So what I started off before, I said that everyone says it's matzahs that you have the Shittas Rosh. You don't have the Shittas Rosh. About that, everyone is masking for the Shittas Rosh. Shittas Rosh is what the Shulchan Aruch. That the people say this is Shittas Rosh matzahs or not. What they mean is the Shittas Rosh will all they do it. Like we said, there's many kashas on the Rosh. And Allah, the Rasul say the Rosh is only if we see that it was in Schamim. The Chazon says the Ma'aseh the Asa, but you can't. And we said maybe the Guru says there's a certain amount of time, like upon him. So to say 4.5 minutes, that it's going to come chametz, about that you can't say. But about, like you said, about you should be careful that it shouldn't be shown without any, even for a second. Now, obviously, it's not possible for a second. Whatever could be done, could be done. So now we're going to try to go through the process and see what could be done. So again, the sheets.
It's not a half a minute. What is it?
So that's what we're going to explain now. So again, just recap what we start off with, that till Daricha, we don't have the sheets of Rosh period. There, no matter how long it's going to stay, it's not a shaila of chimetz unless someone did a big asik that was going that the process can be quickened, but just sitting around, it's not going to be a problem. Once you start off Daricha, which we said the sheets of Mishnah is if they made the matzah, then already starts the sheets of Rosh, and about the you should leave it without any asik period. But the diavad, to say that it's going to come chametz if it's less than half a minute, that avada you can't say. But avada lechatchila should be done. So what exactly shares? Obviously, if someone wants to be yotzer, pashtus or sheets of Rosh, that should be shown without even for a second. Obviously, a second is something to get a little in terms of machashoras. So you really have to study the process in the matzah bakery, and like the lashon of Rav Shlomo Zalman is when we see the matzah is a matzah ba'azuva. It means it looks like it's just left. But in the regular process of the way the matzah goes, and things are going one after another, even if obviously that takes time, obviously that's calls there nichlal in what has to be done. So let me go through the process and explain a little bit better. So after they make the matzah, goes from the maschil to the goymer. So obviously, if the maschil throws the goymer and the goymer is in the middle of a matzah and that matzah sits a couple of seconds waiting for the goymer to start, so to say that the matzah is not good, I wouldn't say the matzah is not good. If someone wants to have muhudlik matzahs, that there's no chashash of any shia whatsoever, especially here the she's started, if it sits for a couple of seconds, about it, that's a matzah, there'll be mokum to be careful. The same thing is, the Metzia says the maschilin, sometimes when they make a matzah, those pieces fall off. And those pieces that fall off are sitting on the table. Then the next matzah comes, they're putting it on that same spot, and those pieces could have been sitting for a couple of seconds. So about it, again, to say that piece of chametz, not saying that was a piece of chametz, about chas v'shalom, chametz, and can't pass any matzahs. But there is a mokum zehirus that those pieces you should have someone. It's very hard for someone to stick his hands in there because he's gonna stop the process. But you have someone in the middle tell the people before they put down the next matzah. They normally have like the matzah baker have like a piece that they have a small thing there. It's like a shovel. It's like a black bag of plastic. You have to give it to them. Someone in charge that they push it to the side. But the thing is not.
Why is it better on the floor? Doing matzahs on the floor.
Not using it. Who cares?
Also, it doesn't get onto the matzah.
Right. As long as it doesn't on the matzah, we don't care. They're not making it on Pesach. And Mishabur, this is not my new thing. This is Mishabur races. Mishabur and Sifkat and Mem Gimel says, Mishabur says, if every Isa, you should take off the pieces. Now, if you have a good matzah bakery, really the things are going one after another. Really, things shouldn't take any time. If the maskell throws the goymer, everything is done properly. Really, there shouldn't be any time between the maskell and the goymer. Obviously, if the goymer is finishing one matzah, there's a matzah that's sitting there for 2 seconds. That's about a get of the machashoras. That's part of the process. Now, after the goymer finishes it, he throws it to the one that's better. The red law obviously is going to be doing one matzah. Then after that finishes that matzah, he's starting the next matzah. Now, he can't throw him the matzah after the redler finishes because that's going to stop the whole process. So he's obviously throwing it to him while he's dying the matzah. So looking at the matzah bakeries, the way the process goes, he has to throw the matzah while he's redling one matzah, and that's fine because that's a gedol in the Torah machashoras. The only way for the system to keep on going is if he throws him one while he's in the middle of redling one. But sometimes what happens is things get backed up, and he can be redling one matzah and then throwing him not only one. There's a second matzah sitting there, sometimes even 3 matzahs sitting there. So those are matzahs. So to say that any chashchims, I wouldn't say. But you want to know if it's a mohudik matzah, I don't know if it would be a mohudik matzah because a maisa, that's something that could be avoided, and there would be mokum for a chabur to machman not to take those other matzahs. Same thing after he finishes the matzah, they put the matzah on the stick. If he's in the middle of redling and they're waiting for that matzah also. That's a gedlin shoris, and you wait for that matzah. But if he's didn't even start reading the matzah, and now you want to wait for that matzah, about you shouldn't do that, and that matzah should be board into the oven right away, because that would be a chash. That's something very interesting. I've seen a lot of matzah bakeries that maybe because people tell them to do this, that the workers, after they finish the matzah, they're waiting for the next step, they take the matzah and they spin it around. Seems to be that people tell them to do that. I think that's like it did, because spinning around is not an Asa Gomer, and since it's not Asa Gomer, all they're doing is creating a bigger problem. Happens to be they take the matzah and they spin it like this.
What's the point of it?
I don't know what the point of that is. I'm assuming that this is what they all do. I'm assuming what they do it because people told them they should do that, because if sitting, they feel that that's some type of ASIC. I'm assuming that's the chat, but I don't think that's an ASIC. I mean, they're making a bigger problem because they're just touching the matzah without an ASIC. It happens to be the manager over here in the matzah bakery in Lakewood. When I was hired to work to stop it, he says, I'll tell you something interesting. He says, I bake Rabbi Yashiv matzahs, and Rabbi Yashiv saw the workers doing it. He went over to them and told them, read this Mishnah, don't touch it, because you're creating a bigger problem. But Liza Matthias says, people tell the workers to do it. Pressing down. So ASIC is, I'll make a sequence of the whole thing. So the kids, what comes out like this. When a matzah starts, until the matzah finishes, we have 18 minutes. Now, that's the Gemara. Unless we see it got Simon Chimas, if it doesn't, we have 18 minutes. But Lechatchila, we bought from the Gemaras, Shulchan Aruch, that you now leave without any ASIC even for a second. That's all Lechatchila, but there's no way for it to come chametz. But if you're going to make an ASIC that's not an ASIC Heroi, means ASIC we explain means that you're pushing down on it, not just touching the top of it, like the Real says that like that they just want to roll it, and they consider that an ASIC. He says that's making it worse. That's mechamim the matzah. But that's all till you get to the Shitas Rosh. The Shitas Rosh is that the Rosh holds after there's a certain amount of ASIC in the matzah itself, not in the dough. The matzah itself, that means you already made that richa. It means after the point that the matzah was already made, I think it's before the goyim, like we said, but after the maschil already finished the matzah, that's when the Shitas Rosh is called. Rosh holds that it's the chametz miyad. You don't have an ASIC. Mr. Bura, class, and maybe beyond. Abdafkum, he said there's a shir that's brought down. Yashiv and others that till a half a minute. Chaznish says the Lamaisa b'diavad yikinas, a period, and we said some hold that it only means if it's nischam. But about the right thing is, like Rabbi Yashiv says, that about it should be voshnelo, and is very stakamokim for mahudadika baking that a person wants to have is that it shouldn't have any shias whatsoever. Obviously, there has to be a certain amount of shias because that's a get limit. But we're talking about whatever, if you have a matzah bakery and you're looking at the normal system, the way they have it, and things don't stop. But if there's a crack in the system, whatever reason something happens, and things get backed up. I was baking matzahs 2 weeks ago, and we checked the redler before the next thing, and for some reason the redler was not cleaned properly, and there was a little bit easier left in that, and that's a problem, because it's more than 18 minutes. And they had to re-clean the whole redler and everything. And because of that, some matzahs got backed up. That's like a problem. And those matzahs shouldn't be taken. So I want to mention one thing, because I was in the matzah bakery, and the owner of the matzah bakery told me that there was some chavuras that started making a toll because there was some matzahs that went in, and they made a cheshbon that by time it was baked, it was after 18 minutes. And they made a toll about it, and he was telling them that it's not a problem. So here's me.
How did that happen? There's a clock there, and it shuts them off automatically.
So the answer is that, let's say the clock says 17 minutes, 55 seconds. Now the matzah went in at 17 minutes and 55 seconds, right? It's in the oven, but it takes more than 5 seconds to bake. But they were saying that they can't take those matzahs. So I told him that he's right and they're wrong, for two reasons. First of all, the Matthias is that from when that matzah started until it went into the oven, it was not more than 5 minutes. So really, that's in reaction with that matzah. But even if you're going to say that maybe the matzah touched something and other dough, but it's mefurish and shulta geborim that is totally on when it goes into the oven, and the chazash also stuff, and it has to be that way. Because if you're going to tell me there's a chash chimas when something goes into the oven, everything matzah comes chametz, because you can't get. We know that the pitan is a problem. So when it goes into the oven, why doesn't it come chametz? The territory is oven. right? It's always
that
pitana.
microsecond before it's in the
The obviously that's a mashal, but the question is, once it's already in the oven with that heat, why does it come chametz? The teretz is that heat is so strong that prevents the
So why didn't the answer? That's the baking process.
whatever. I'm saying, but what's the answer? We know it's a baking process. The teretz is that the baking process creates it that it can't come chametz. So if that creates it can't come chametz, I don't care if that's after 18 minutes. Everything is coming chametz only when you're in a time that it takes 18 minutes to come chametz. But that's something. Allah is if you're doing an asik, even after 18 minutes, it's not going to come chametz. So if something is being baked after 18 minutes, it's not a problem. So the matzah, as long as it goes in before 18 minutes, that's fine. Obviously, you have to be careful. It shouldn't be going in the last second. But if matzah does go in, as long as the matzah went into the oven on the oven floor and it was before 18 minutes, that's fine. There's no problem with that matzah. Okay, we'll stop here. Is there any question, Rabbi Gaddisman?
Yeah. So where does the half a minute come from? Where is the such a clear for half a minute?
So I mentioned before that the Mishnah Berurah says that maybe efshad the miyad lav nafka. The Maimotcha says it's coming from the Maimotcha. Maimotcha says ain't lokable, right? But Mishnah Berurah brings it down because there's a lot of cash on the Rosh, and you have to say it's miyad lav nafka. Kind of what that shear is. So they bring that from Yashiv urges, and it's printed in Yussi Yosef from the Frati Sefer. He says Rabbi Yashiv said, till a half a minute you can't say it's a problem. They said over from Shlomo Zalman, printed in Madonna Shlomo, and from Israel they said the shear of a minute. Shlomo Zalman said a sprach that if it's called azuva, means it looks like you left the matzah. It's like a chiddush. It's a chiddush that amount, and a chanami. But to go say that it's the matzah's chametz before then, I wouldn't say it's chametz. But about you want to know it's a mulbig matzah, not a mulbig matzah. Mulbig matzah is a matzah that is done in a way that there shouldn't be any shias that's possible. It's possible. Obviously, whatever process the matzah has to go from point A to point B, and from point B to C and continue, that's not a shia. But whatever there's a crack in the system, or something happens that gets backed up, that would be a about a mokum for a kabura not to take those matzahs.
Is there any right? Let's say you have one to the fakers. Can you hold us the right that they're all with them?
You know, the question is, we'll phrase the question different. What happens if you have a matzah that came chometz and it got mixed up with other matzahs? What's the law? So really, Mikadin is that the halacha is that it's bought when it comes Pesach, it's a Dovi Yovish. Dovi Yovish is chayzev and it's a problem. But I'll tell you something very, very interesting. There's a halacha that it's a halacha in Yeridea, Simon Kofyud, Siv Zayin, that says over there that if you have a Dovi Yovish, it's not bought for whatever reason. Talking about that case, the same thing as the Gay Pesach, and someone ate one of those things, then we say that there's a faker. Maybe he ate the one that was chametz, and it was like he didn't eat the one that was chametz. That maybe he ate the one that was chametz, and it was like he didn't eat the one that was chametz. Maybe every single time eating one, maybe that's not the one that's a problem. So maybe you could be maker. So Mishnah Berurah brings down in I think it's a Mishnah Berurah in Tov Mem Zayin, brings down that if you had a matzah that got mixed up, one matzah was chametz, it got mixed up with other matzahs, and before Pesach someone ate one matzah, then the matzah would not be, all the other matzahs would be mutter, even if it's a real chametz matzah. But here we're not talking about any matzahs that are real chametz. It's really, honestly, have a matzah to say in a regular matzah break, a matzah chametz. I would say it's very hard to find a matzah that say mamish it's chametz. Shaul of chametz hidurim. So you would say Mishnah Berurah talks about matzah that's kula, and he says that there's a Mishnah Berurah in Tov Nun Aleph that he says that about this much more easy to make bittul because it's only a chumrah. So I wouldn't be so worried about it. You know, the attitude is that we try to make it whatever possible. You have to understand what Allah is and try to make it whatever possible to make it better.
Someday we were questioning in Shabbat. Somebody tried to shove it in the wine, and he broke the person's glasses. And now there was a dinner on the spot. Viffel Dafret sold. Does he have to pay a regular price? So the guy kind of no. You have chabur matzahs, and these are very expensive matzahs, and I want you to spend to pay the full price of the most political matzah.
I don't answer Freish Mish B'Shalos, so I'm not going to answer the question, but I don't see why these matzahs are worth more because there's a market. there's a market. I can tell you that when I bake the matzahs, all the matzahs that I guess we rejected, we didn't want, you know, and it was a berach that says 12 pounds of matzahs, and the owner of the matzah baker said he's selling it for chabur matzahs. He's selling it. He says your rejects are better than.
What's the definition? So we should raise another question. I'm asking a question. What's the definition of a chabur matzah?
So whatever we're talking about now, this is the definition of chabur matzah. That means
no, that's yochum. That's the highest possible standard.
Oh, what's a chabur? I can't answer. I
go into the answer. It never happened until a year or two ago. They never sold chabur matzahs in stores. At least not. I don't know. In Europe, like when they sold chabur matzahs in stores.
Yeah.
Dover Nadir Admoid. Now all of a sudden, last year or two, they start selling chabur matzahs. I know what a matzah is.
So I would assume this is what I mentioned before. That they say Shitas Rosh and not Shitas Rosh. Now Shitas Rosh is more than a Shulchan Aruch. No one's arguing on the Rosh. But what they call Shitas Rosh, not Shitas Rosh means, are they taking the Rosh more literally, or they're taking the Rosh that the halacha. What?
What's Mashiach?
Right, but not.
That's for half a minute.
That means not no chabura would take a matzah that's after half a minute, even if Yasha said it's good. Listen, then it's not a chabur matzah. Some chaburas will let it sit for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, but more than 15 seconds, I don't think any chabur would take it. Not a chabur matzah.
Maybe it's enough manpower to watch every matzah.
Yeah, I don't know. Wait, I mean, there's two. When you talk about chabur matzahs, two types of chabur matzahs. Chabur matzahs means there are people that just. There's a shul that everyone goes together and they bake matzahs, which is a very nice thing because you have, like the Rosh says, that the person himself should make matzahs. That's the Val Gezach. I'm not taking away from it. But I wouldn't call that chabur matzahs. Chabur matzahs means when there's chabur, there's baking. It's on every step of the process to make sure that everything's done. So that obviously, no one's going to wait half a minute or close to half a minute. That wouldn't be considered a moed matzah. Is it a kosher matzah? Yes. If someone says the matzah is chametz chas v'shom, you can't say that it's a chametz matzah. You're not saying what people eat is chametz. I'm not saying that. But is it moed matzah? It's not a moed matzah. No.
So the leaves out the question. It's a question. Not going to pass the shaila. What allows the matzah bakeries necessarily to sell chabur matzah? If you rejected it, it means it was over half a minute. Because
they'll tell you that the oilam consumer that's buying it, they see what those chaburs are, and they see what they're makbid on, and my rejects, or I mean mine, but someone else's rejects are better than what that is. So they hold that they can sell. I mean, I would assume that's the job.
And really, if you ask me, and we'll close with this, that should be full disclosure of that. You know, that these are the rejects of chaburas, and this is what you get.
So
they won't do that because they can't charge $48 a pound for that.
Because they'll tell you that we watch your process. I mean, I can tell you when I was baking matzahs, you know, he was asking me why rejecting these matzahs. I go before I bake, I go through with him. I sit down with him about 40 points in different zachs when I'm back. But for example,
owner, which one?
Owner and the mashgiach, not the mashgiach. There's a manager and the owner. Go through both of them. They're the bottom line. And for example, just one point. For example, I tell them that like I mentioned before, if you have a redler, it's redling. Now, you can't wait for him to start redling, but if you finish redling, you throw another matzah in. The whole process is not going to go.
That could be something.
Right, but
overlap.
Right. That means while he's redling, you can throw him another matzah.
Right.
So but if they're going to throw him a second matzah, that means it's sitting on the table 2 matzahs for him. Kosher came 3, which in a regular system it could be waiting. I am not taking that second matzah. Is it chametz? No, it's not a moed matzah. But the first matzah, that's part of the process.
What do you mean? First, in addition to one that's being read.
Right. That means he's throwing in one. There has to be that while he's redling, you're throwing one because if you watch the way the system works, it's not possible.
Too fast.
Right. So they go very quick. We're talking about 1 second.
How does the redler take?
And maybe it
goes this way or goes this way.
He goes like the massive redler will hit like this, goes like this, both directions. It's a question of maybe
redling is exactly the same way it was done in Thailand 200 years ago.
That I can't say because even those some matzah bakers that I've seen, they have very, very, very small redler. And then you have to go back a couple of times. Happens to be in Lakewood that has a huge redler, which is very interesting. There's a Trumas Adeshan that talks about, I mentioned before, that if she is, at what point is she is mistarif, at what point do we say that something can hack up the she is? So he says that there's a chiluk with Eisa Gomer or not. There's a more in Shumas Deshen that if you have the red look, that's not called Eisa Gomer. I know Rishon Meir Katz holds that the red look they have here in the matzah bakery in Lakewood, which is it's not a little thing, it's a massive thing there, and it's very, very heavy. He holds that's Eisa Gomer. It's not good. It's a
It's much bigger than the matzah.
It's much bigger than the matzah.
Like a big pizza thing.
It's about this. It's about this big.
Where?
Oh, it's a roll like this, and it goes over the roll.
It's a very big roll.
It goes right over the pie matzah.
It goes
Like a piece,
microphone.
like this, and like this.
Oh, so this way and
Right. It goes very quick. You watch them. They go phenomenally
It's
quick.
like a tea.
You go like this and like this. It goes very quick. You have to watch it. So when he's reading it right away, you throw
So
it.
the second one is not sitting there for more than 10 seconds?
10 seconds. The first one that's sitting there is not sitting
No,
there.
while he's rattling the first, how long is the second one?
The one that's waiting,
Yeah.
I don't believe 1 or 2 seconds.
2 seconds?
Yeah. Maybe 2 to 3 seconds.
And who wipes it off the thing?
Pretty much. So he takes it. He finished reading, he throws it to the next
He
guy.
does, the same guy does?
He
Why
reads
don't
it.
they get another guy standing there and just put it off?
No, he throws it to the
Why? Why can't they get another guy to throw it?
They do very good. Have to watch. They do very good. These guys are professional. But the same thing, like I mentioned before, if you're going to have, let's say, the maschil thrown to the corner, so if the city match is there, that's a backup. So whatever the system,
You told me this guy can do this for 10 hours straight?
it's not an easy job.
It's very physically
It's
taxing job.
you have to watch them. These people.
One guy? Does the whole shift?
No. The whole shift, yeah, but they I don't think he does the whole day. I don't know. I can't tell you.
And how much they pause between each chabura?
They get, I think, every 2 hours of breaking 5 minutes. It's very hard work. Very hard work.
Well, it's changing the paper takes 5 minutes, no?
The what?
Changing the paper roll takes a few minutes.
No. You're talking in between 80 minutes?
Yeah.
Between 80 minutes, about 10 seconds. I'll explain you why. You why. You have to watch it. In the matzah bakery here, what they do is that the tables where they do the matzahs on, metal tables, they switch the tables. They have like tabletops. And after 18 minutes, they take off the tabletops and they already have clean other tabletops. They have two sets. So they as soon as the grain take off the tabletops, they bring it to the washing area. There's other grain that's some on top to make sure that take the new ones already putting back on. So it's a shy of
Why are we using going for this?
You can use grain for that. As long as there's a mashgiach that's on top of them. We have someone that checks to make sure.
There's no ASIC, we can use a good. But why using good? Because it's cheaper.
Exactly. The same thing by talk when this guy starts, let's say, doing he does the dough. When he starts the dough until the dough gets to the oven is let's say 2-3 minutes in time exactly. He already when he finishes his layers dough, he washes his hand and he's already by time the last one from 18 minutes number 1 goes into the oven, he's already started the next dough the next 18 minutes. So that means you could have him in one, and there's 2 separate clocks. There's a clock that's counting down for 1, the other one's going the other direction for the new one. It can be the same time, but in the middle of the matzah bakery, you're going to see that there's nothing going on there because the table's empty. But the new people already started to make the new dough, and the old dough and the old matzahs are still going in. You have to watch it.
Yeah.
Rabbi Gaddisman, we'll take them for a tour, and we'll.
We're going to have to take them for a tour. We have to taxi to let us get in there to let us look at it.
You don't
You
need.
finished. You didn't. You finished.
You don't need protection. I'll be happy to think. But if you want, I could speak to them.
You need protection. You can't walk into somebody's matzah bakery to watch.
No,
A chabura.
chabura, the matzah bakery itself. The matzah bakery itself.
No, you want to watch chabura. That's the whole point.
Chabura. That right. There you have to speak.
The whole point is to watch a chabura.
Yeah, you have to watch a specific chabura, and you have to ask that chabura. No, you can watch from the outside, but to go inside, you have to.
What does the outside mean?
Oh, there's windows.
Not the one. Not the shops of matzah bakery. There's no
Like a matzah bakery.
Like
There's
there's a
windows.
window.
There's windows.
There's a viewing area. You can
There's
watch.
viewing area. Yeah, it's full of people.
Okay.
Yeah. You could see the basic pass. You want to go in the room, you can't go into the room because it's going to stab the workers, the people.
You should go better up. Thank you.
Okay. Shkoyach.
Marshall, still there?